Now, ladies and gentlemen, it is with pleasure at this point in time that I invite up on stage for his address before the panel discussion, the Group Senior Executive Vice President of EDF. We'd like to welcome up on stage, ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Marianne Laigneau. She's right there.
Okay. Thank you. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm deeply honored and pleased to be with you this afternoon and to be in charge of the keynotes for, let's say, the last part of a triptych dedicated to invest, innovate, and integrate. So let's go and let's move to integrate. What does it mean? It means, as you may know, that a lot of different actors, such as power plants operators, networks, infrastructure providers, vehicle owners, transport system operators, and developers of new solutions are strongly influencing the long-term evolution of the energy system. So how can it be possible to integrate all those different points of view in order to shape and to design the future of the energy production? This is a highly complex and challenging question, so I will only tackle a few points, mainly 3 of them, in order to share my thoughts with you. I have 3 convictions I would like to share with you. First of all, the future of energy is electric. It's about electricity, as it has been said this morning. Secondly, it's about integration. And thirdly, new models need to be tested now on small and medium scale. New model for integration purpose. So first of all, the future of energy is electric. As Fatih Birol mentioned this morning, why is this? The absolute necessity we all need to share is to fight against climate change by shifting out the direct fossil energy used in building and transportation and developing free carbon energy. For growth, you need energy. For sustainable growth, you need sustainable energy. It's not about technologies, it's about the goals we are trying to match all together. And then the technologies will come later on. International Energy Agency predicts a shift to electricity and links this increase directly to the commitment to carbon-free goal. According to the agency, electricity should represent 40% of the rise in final consumption by 2040, the same share of growth that oil took for the past 25 years. As an international utility, EDF is fully committed to this energy transition for its customers and for the general interest by supporting industrial and social change. We intend to become the leader in large low-carbon electricity facilities that are safe and competitive. You can see on the slides, I will not comment the figure, but just to point out the 85% of carbon-free generation inside the EDF group energy mix. Why this does? Mainly because of the role of nuclear and hydro in this mix. We have, we think, quite good results, but nevertheless, we took 2 further commitments in order to tackle this climate change issue. First of all, we committed to increase our global capacity in renewable energy by 2030 to double it, moving from 28 gigawatts worldwide, talking about wind, hydro, solar, up to 50 gigawatts by 2030. We commit ourselves also to extend the life of our existing nuclear plants because they are competitive and safe, and to develop new nuclear in France, in UK, in China, in India, with partners. We also took a second commitment to reduce our CO2 direct emission from 51 million tons in 2017 down to 30 million tons by 2030. Second conviction I'd like to share with you is that the future of energy is about integration, which is the proper issue of this last panel, so it's perfect. Why is that? Because of the massive injection of intermittent renewable electricity. I mentioned already the International Energy Agency figures. Global renewable electricity generation is expected to grow by more than 1/3 in the next coming years, because also of new consumer needs and requirements. We need to design the energy system as a whole. The integration of variable decentralized generation is a pressing challenge for our energy sector, particularly in markets or regions where higher shares of renewable penetrates. Addressing this challenge requires integration measures in terms of physical connection and network management. So it's about mainly, but not only about the grid, and you can see on my slide what the grid used to be in the past, and now it is becoming a bidirectional energy management system more than a physical infrastructure network. How can we tackle this integration issue? By taking some solutions, effective and efficient solutions. There can be technical issues, technical measures, also regulatory measures. I can mention some of them. We need to timely plan for grid infrastructure development. The lead time associated with infrastructure development can be long and needs to be accounted for in the planning process. We need to reinforce the coordination and engagement of different stakeholders, meaning regulators, governments, developers, transmission, distribution system operators, and consumers. This is vital for a sustainable transition towards a renewable energy-based power sector. It will, like that, ensure the integration of different solutions, including, for example, off-grid applications, solar home systems, that the one EDF is now deploying in some African countries like Ivory Coast. These are now the most cost-effective solution for expanding electricity access in some rural areas. Another measure should be to support for emerging technology solutions, such as smart meterings, smart grids, of course, storage infrastructure, and demand-side management. Because together, they can enhance network management capabilities and improve system flexibility, which is going to be key. In France, Enedis, EDF Group subsidiary in charge of the electric distribution, has already installed 13 million of smart meters, and it's due to deploy 35 million of smart meters by 2021. So a huge change, a huge industrial program, and we will, as EDF, but more the supplier and the customers will get some benefits from this change, from this revolution. It will help the smart grid deployment to make the incorporation of renewable energy sources easier. It will help the electric suppliers to propose pricing or services to manage household equipment and to consume when and where there is local generation. It will increase the need for energy demand management through free, secure, and unobstructed consumption data, and data will be key. We can provide information to local authorities to develop local energy plan and efficient energy policies. These smart grid systems will also help to secure the power supply and to provide provisional management of maintenance work from forecast, simulation, and priority investment, thanks to data collection on the grid. Of course, it will also enable to participate in electrical and plug-in hybrid solutions. And very recently, in October, EDF Group announced and launched its plans about electric mobility in order to become the sector's leading energy company, let's say mainly in Europe, but it also expands outside Europe because we are deeply convinced that electric mobility, electric vehicles are an issue for, let's say, for large cities wherever they are in the world. And we had the opportunity to discuss this with some Singaporean partners this morning. Storage is also a part of this integration solutions, and in that respect, too, EDF Group has strong ambitions and to develop 10 gigawatts of additional storage capacity by 2035, sorry, in the world, on the top of the 5 gigawatt we already have and operated by EDF Group. It represents an investment of 8 billion during the 5 coming years. Of course, we should also, in order to better integrate, encourage the modification of consumer demand and in order to use less energy, because tackling the climate change issue, it's about of course, better energy, but it's also about energy being used at the proper time during peak hours, for example, to use less energy during these peak hours, or to move the time of energy use to off-peak times, such at night or weekends. So again, this demand-side management will help to reduce the need for investment in networks. It's also an integration solution. Let's finish by my third and last point about integration. We need to experiment now new energy system models to be ready right now and in the coming years. As I mentioned before, there's not only one good answer, there's not only one good solution, and we need to have a comprehensive view of what could be a bunch of solutions in a diversified energy mix, including renewable, hydro, and nuclear as well, as I said before. So we need to adapt our energy system to this context and to quickly experiment in order to spotlight the political and investment choice that should be appropriate right now. That's why EDF Group is carrying out several projects of that type all around the world, but I would like, because we are in Singapore, I would like to mention two specific illustrations linked to Singapore, and also to share with you the fact that EDF Group moved his Asian headquarters from Bangkok in Thailand to Singapore. Just yesterday, we have the launching, inauguration, and warming ceremony for that. And two examples linked to Singapore. First of all, we have, as you may know, a research and development lab in Singapore for more than 7 years. And this lab partners with the Housing Development Board of Singapore, EDB, in order to develop innovative 3D digital urban modeling tool to help the Singaporean Housing Board to simulate different urban scenarios in order to maximize energy research outcomes in Singapore. It is about integration. And my last example, it's about a demonstrator that we will inaugurate tomorrow in the south of Singapore on an island. And some words about it. It's called Mazera project, meaning microgrid for affordable and sustainable electricity in remote area. What does it mean? I think it's better to launch a video in order to share this with you. So if you can have the image of this video. If not, I will do it myself. So it's about an integration system, integrating, let's say, classical sources of generation and renewable energy sources, combined with grids, with smart meters, with EV plugging, in order to provide affordable electricity to remote area like island, and it is very scalable, so it's a small, medium-sized system, microgrid, but it can be multiplied up to 10 times in order to tackle, let's say, an hospital needs, university needs, village needs, whatever in the world, and especially in Asia. And this inauguration will take place tomorrow. Just to share with you, and I will conclude, that there are solutions in our hands. We should be optimistic, although some figures could lead us to be rather pessimistic. We are all together fighting these climate change effects, and there are solutions, technical, regulatory, financial solutions, in order to better integrate all these energy efficiency issues together. Thank you for your attention.
EDF has been a long-standing partner of Singapore. We opened an EDF lab there in 2012. So with this microgrid, our objective is very simple. We want to develop a low-cost, plug-and-play, green electricity microgrid in order to provide electricity to remote territories in small islands, Southeast Asia, and all over the world. This project proves the industrial leadership of the EDF Group, of all its partners, and especially the distribution company, Enedis.
Indeed impressive from EDF. Let's give EDF a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Ms. Laigneau, thank you very much for that. On to our final panel discussion, ladies and gentlemen. Moderating this session, I would like to call upon Datuk Ahmad Fauzi bin Hasan, Chairman of Energy Commission of Malaysia, and the following panelists. We have Zehong. He's the Executive Vice President, State Grid Corporation of China. Incidentally, he will be giving his sharing in Mandarin. So for those of you who would like to have your interpretation headsets, pick them up right now as I introduce the rest of the panelists, and it will be on Channel 2. Channel 2, where he will be giving a sharing in Mandarin. We also have back on stage Professor Masakazu Toyoda, Chairman and CEO of the Institute of Energy Economics Japan. Kaveh Zahedi, Deputy Executive Secretary for Sustainable Development, UN Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific. Agneta Rising, Director General, World Nuclear Association. We already have Marianne Laigneau on stage. And of course, completing this panel, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Kazuhisa Yano, Chief Asia Representative, Osaka Gas. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I will now hand over the floor to Datuk Ahmad Fauzi for the panel discussion. All yours, sir.
Thank you. First of all, let me thank the organizer for having me here to moderate this session today with the theme of Integrate. We are very honored to have with us today to discuss in this session on the issue of integration of energy resources, systems and policies. How we could better integrate energy systems and resources is very important, as has been highlighted just now by the address. And I think what we are looking here is basically where we are now in terms of trying to achieve this low carbon energy systems in the future is not very easy to get there. As highlighted this morning, we are only having about 2% of renewable energy in the energy system globally, and we want to increase to a much higher quantum. Maybe in 2050, based on the reports by authorities in the world, we should achieve about 60% of wind and solar energy in the mix. And this is a very ambitious target. But whether we want it or not, we have to do it, because otherwise we'll be having a problem of climate change with degrees higher than 2 degrees happening in 2050. So basically, today we want to learn from countries that have managed to integrate quite successfully variable renewable energy resources, such as wind and solar, into their energy system. People like Denmark, for instance, they have 53% now in the system of variable renewable energy. Uruguay about 32%, Germany about 26%, Ireland 25%, Spain 23%. So basically we think, although it's a very big challenge for us to surmount, but it has been proven that it can be done. And when you have high levels of variable renewable energy in the system, definitely we can better achieve our target of what we want to have in 2050, for instance, so that we do not have more than 2 degrees centigrade increase in temperature as compared to pre-industrial levels, as well as we also want to have, not least important, affordable and reliable system. So basically, we will definitely find a way to integrate all these energy resources, systems, as well as policies for us to be successful in our climate change agenda. So I would like to go around first to invite panelists. I shall not introduce further the panelists because of time constraints. because it has been introduced just now. Firstly, I would like to invite Mr. Zehong, who is the Executive Vice President of the State Grid Corporation of China, to give his initial thoughts on the theme of integration of energy system, maybe about 2 minutes. Sorry for the brief period. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I come from the State Grid of Corporation of China. We're the largest corporation in the world, and we build and operate the largest state grid, and we have maintained the longest period of operation without any faults or downtime. And we are not only a promoter but also a practitioner of integrated energy systems. For our company, we have more than 510 million watts in the renewable energy integrated into the grid, among which there are 226 million installed capacity of solar power, of hydropower, 139 million wind power, and 145 million kilowatts of solar power. In the future, whatever energy development, we will focus around energy, power generation, and we will emphasize on green and clean energy consumption, and we will convert those devices and machines based on other energy sources to convert them to electricity-powered devices and machines. And there are 3 aspects of the work that we're focusing on. The first is the modulation between the different types of energy sources, for example, hydropower, solar power, and wind power. And secondly, we will have comprehensive development of the comprehensive deployment of the smart technologies, such as the smart meter, smart grid, to implement them as much as possible. And thirdly, we will use more efficient storage equipment. Currently, our major development is on hydro. We have 19.6 million kilowatts of power, and we also have 20 hydropower generation with installed capacity of 3.015 billion kilowatts. So in order to adapt to large-scale clean energy, we have to increase the coverage of the grid. Currently, our focus of the coverage is domestically in China to utilize the extreme high power voltage coverage to connect the northeast area with the southwest area and the middle area. And in terms of the energy saving, we have also done a lot of work. In northern part of China, we understand the most power consumption item is air cons, and so we have utilized smart technology to improve on the air conditioning, especially the heating system. So nowadays we have 450 million square meters of coverage of heating system using electricity, and we have calculated that by replacing the coal powers with electricity power, we can significantly reduce the carbon emission and the pollution. And at the same time, in terms of electrified high-speed rail is famous, and we also have electric cars. So our company has covered almost all the highways, providing electrical charging stations for the electric cars. And the consumers of the electric cars can actually know which charger is good, which charger has fault, and which charger is close to you. We have more than 1.2 million users connecting 49,000 charging poles in China. In terms of industry upgrading, we also have industry heating systems upgrading. For the power consumption in airport and seaport, we also have upgrades and changes. And this work has saved us 20 million kilowatts last year.
By 2020, we can upgrade and provide about 50 million kilowatt hours of such electricity. Based on our practice, we believe that through technology, innovation, policy, incentives, and public education, we can use more clean energy and clean electricity, and it is very viable and feasible for the country. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Very enlightening indeed what China is doing in terms of integrating the energy system. Smart technology definitely features very much there. Electric vehicles, interconnections, and heating systems upgrades. Thank you, Mr. Zehong. Can we go to Professor Masakazu Toyoda, if you could give us a 2-minute of your thoughts on this subject of integration?
Well, Mr. Moderator, thank you very much for a very interesting question. I think perhaps integration is getting more and more important, and the first stage is integrate intermittent renewable energy with backup energy. I think in the meantime, perhaps gas-fired plant or coal-fired plant can be sort of backup, but in the longer term, it could be connected with battery or even hydrogen. I would elaborate why hydrogen could be storage, but I think eventually that could be quite important. And secondly, I think somehow, as Mr. CEO said, the connection between intermittent energy with electric vehicle or CFB, this is another stage which could be quite interesting. And the third stage could be, I think, as Marianne said, integration between renewable energy and demand restraint. So I think there are several stages for integration, but I think it is very important.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm sure Japan is doing so much in this area, and I think you are promoting in a big way the use of hydrogen together with electricity in the transport tech sector. Demand response, definitely, you are one of the best in the world, on this. So thank you. Can we have some comments from Mr. Kaza, who's Yano, please, for Chief Asia Representative of Osaka Gas? Yeah.
Thank you very much for your appointment, Mr. Moderator. To discuss about integration, I would like to introduce the energy value chain on the viewpoint of gas utility, as it exemplifies integration of primary energy. As shown in this diagram, Osaka Gas is vertically integrated energy company involving the full gas business value chain. We serve natural gas to over 6 million customers with an optimized value chain from upstream and LNG transportation to downstream field of power business and gas marketing. Mere gas supply business should be transformed to integrated energy business. Now, Osaka Gas is not only a gas supplier in Osaka. Thus, we introduce our new group brand, Degas Group. We have launched this new brand to express our commitment to be an innovative energy and service company. Degas stands for dynamic and innovative, genuine and studious. We call this logo Dynamic Triangle. Dynamic Triangle represents of our corporate values: customer-oriented, wholehearted, and enterprising spirit. Degas Group is an integrated energy group. What I mean by integrated is not only about our business value chain, but also our wide range of technology-driven solutions. One unique point about Degas Group is that we are pioneer in big data analysis to apply throughout the value chain to create more values for all stakeholders. Examples of such are failure prediction of gas facilities and demand prediction. In terms of LNG operational optimization, we have developed cryogenic power plant, which utilize cold energy from LNG in our terminal. We have been also contributing energy efficiency in natural gas end users by developing cogen system with manufacturers and even making investment in facilities at customer site to develop the market. Nowadays, Degas Group is going a step forward to biogas business using our research, development, and engineering expertise. Thus, we integrate power sources, including various types of renewables. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Diagas is a gas company, right? And definitely what you have presented shows that gas has a future with renewables. Yeah? At least you have your biogas initiatives, cogen initiatives very much needed in the integration process. Thank you, Mr. Yano. Next, may we have Mr. Kaveh Zahedi, the Deputy Executive Secretary, Sustainable Development, UN Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific, or ESCAP, to comment, please, for about 2 minutes on the subject.
Thank you very much, Datuk. I guess our take on integration might be slightly from a different angle. I think that we're looking at the importance of integrating 3 critical megatrends in Asia Pacific into the decision making. We already see them integrated into public policy making, but increasingly we need to see them integrated into investment decisions as well. The first megatrend, of course, Marianne mentioned it. It's climate change. It is unavoidable. We cannot design energy solutions that do not look at the climate future that countries have promised, that have aspired to. We saw from the IPCC report that was released just a couple of weeks ago that the window is shrinking for us to maintain temperature rise below 1.5 degrees. And of course, the energy sector is going to be the make or break of whether we can keep to that promise. Asia Pacific is important because over half of GHGs generated are from this region. But it's also important because it is the most disaster-prone region. More and more We see the impacts of disasters here in Asia Pacific. In fact, if you live in this region, you're 5 times more likely to experience a natural disaster than if you live anywhere else in the world. The second very important megatrend is that of air pollution. We cannot ignore the issue of air pollution when designing our integrated energy policies. We saw just a couple of days ago the head of the World Health Organization calling air pollution the new tobacco. We know that in Asia Pacific, something like 4 million people die prematurely because of outdoor and indoor air pollution. So this has to be an element of our integrated decision-making, our integrated policies, our investments. And the third one that we haven't heard a lot about today is the issue of inequality. In Asia Pacific, inequality is on the increase. Just last year, in over 40% of our countries, there was an increase in wealth inequality. And part of the inequality story is, of course, energy access, the haves and have-nots. We're on a correct trajectory. We know that more and more people are gaining access to electricity, maybe not quality electricity yet, but at least to electricity. And the projection is that we can reduce the numbers who don't have access. But even achieving 99% access won't be enough, because that would still leave over 60 million people in our region without access to electricity. So we're looking at universal access, and that's the third critical megatrend that must be integrated into our policy-making solutions and into our investments.
Thank you. Thank you. Coming from UN, you are at a higher level looking at the integration of issues there, climate change, air pollution, equality, and access. I think this is very much our interest as well in the energy sector, so that what we do does not jeopardize all these problems that are being looked at by UN and also by each country in this region. Thank you, Mr. Zahedi. May I go to the next panelist, Mrs. Agneta Rising, Director General of the World Nuclear Association, a very interesting organization. Could you share your thoughts about 2 minutes on the issue that we are talking about today?
Thank you very much. Yeah. I'm really happy to do so, and it's good that I'm now last in the panel, because I don't have to repeat the megatrends, because you really put them forward in a very nice way, Mr. Zahedi. So these are the 3 megatrends, and I'm a very optimistic person. I look to the things that are going well and see if we can copy those things that go well and do more of that. Of course, we should learn of things going bad as well. And there are examples of how to integrate in a good way. And I like now to bring forward some examples, because nuclear energy will not probably be mentioned many times during these 2 days. But nuclear energy is a very scalable energy source, and it can scale up very rapidly. And it also is a very effective method to reduce CO2 emissions. And in addition, it's reliable because it delivers 24/7. So I think what we wish to have is that all energy technologies, especially all the low-carbon energy technologies, are treated equally. In fact, we shouldn't have a discussion about technologies. We should have discussions about the goals, which we know is we need to have electricity to more people. We need to have clean electricity, no air pollution, and we need to also manage climate change and reliability. So we need to see these are the things we want to do, and how do we do this best? So I wanted to give to you some examples. I would like to give France as an example, who managed to totally decarbonize the electricity system already decades ago by building nuclear energy to replace fossil fuels fully, and having one of the cleanest electricity systems in the world with nuclear energy working together with renewables. The same thing Sweden has done. Sweden did that faster than any other country per capita in the world ever. And also Switzerland have done this, and Ontario in Canada. So we have good examples using nuclear energy to totally decarbonize electricity system. And then we also have examples how it doesn't work. And I know, and I'm very tough today. I have to mention good countries, but also bad countries. I would like to mention Germany, who has talked a lot and over several decades, put a lot of money into renewables. Up to 2025, they will have been using 500 billion euros for investment in renewables and storage. And they have so far not reduced their CO2 emissions. They have plateaued their CO2 emissions, but not reduced. If they would have put those money into nuclear energy, they would have been totally decarbonized electricity system today.
Thank you. I'm sure as a promoter of nuclear, you're very, very committed to nuclear being part of the solution when we integrate, which has been proven, as you mentioned, in France. And we hope that we don't differentiate the technologies, as we mentioned, when you talk about sustainable power in the future or sustainable energy. I just want to invite the floor to send in your questions, please, through the pigeonhole if you haven't done so. After our second round of discussion, I would like to invite the floor also to put forward your questions to us directly from the floor, besides the pigeonhole. But before that, I would like to go a little bit further to touch on integration of electrical system with the other parts of the energy system, meaning with heat and cooling system in buildings, in industries, and with the transport energy system, So as was mentioned earlier, if we just tackle the power system, we are just tackling about 20% of the problems now, which actually, according to the plan to decarbonize, at least in 2040 or so, we need to double that to 40%. So how do you couple this electricity system with the heat system and with the transport system in the future? Is it really feasible technically to do this? Are there technologies that can help us do this? And what sort of policies should we have in place for us to be able to do this transformation? Maybe Professor Toyoda can help us to answer that question. Yeah.
Thank you very much for a very interesting question. I think we tend to talk about electricity when we discuss energy transition, but as you pointed out, there is important sector for heating and also for transportation. I think with respect to transportation, we have already been seeing, we are trying to utilize electricity for electric vehicle. So it's a sort of power to wheel. It's a coupling, new phenomenon. And a second phenomenon is power to gas. I think here hydrogen comes out. I think hydrogen can be produced from, well, maybe three ways. One is electricity. So renewable energy could produce hydrogen through electrolysis. And so electricity to gas, hydrogen can be produced. And so this is a new phenomenon. But the third issue is hydrogen itself. Hydrogen can be produced from fossil fuel as well. Okay. Coal, gas, and even oil. And so I think hydrogen can be utilized for heating. Yeah. And it could be utilized for FCV vehicle. It could be utilized for power generation as well. And so hydrogen could be a sort of magic energy, which could be produced from either renewable energy and fossil fuel in combination with CCS technology. So it could be zero carbon hydrogen, and even from nuclear. I think high temperature gas could reactor could produce hydrogen as well. And so I think coupling is very important. We simply talk about electricity, but we also talk about heating and transportation. I think as Dr. Birol said, in Tokyo last week, METI minister hosted Hydrogen Council for the first time, and more than 10 ministers came up to the meeting with more than 200 business people. And I think this could provide a good momentum for coupling. I hope that would be the case.
So it can be done. Technology is there, and initiatives are being put in.
I think the challenge is how to reduce the cost.
Yeah.
And at this moment, hydrogen cost is still high.
Yeah.
But we could remember 5 years ago, the cost of solar PV was probably 3 times higher or 5 times higher, but now it's coming down. And so I think it's simply a matter of time. And if we could create a big market together with international society, I think it could be done. And so it's simply a matter of time.
Thank you. So we are looking forward to that. Yeah. The other aspect that was highlighted just now is basically the need for us to integrate regionally and have a physical interconnection between systems and power markets. And I think how do we do this, taking into account the challenges in dealing involving G2G arrangements, government to government to interconnect markets and systems. I think this is very important for us to have renewables as a success story. Perhaps we can have comments on this if any of the panelists can comment how we do this. Perhaps you have your experience, how you get through to governments to interconnect.
I don't know about getting through to governments, but the whole history of my organization has been about promoting regional integration in transport, in trade, in ICT, and increasingly in energy. And I think at the regional level, you have that commitment towards interconnection, towards regional connectivity. We've seen the ministers who are at our Asia Pacific Environment Forum making just such a commitment to developing a roadmap that enables connectivity. And I think that part of the reason for doing so is because only through regional integration can some of these higher level ambitions be met, including the ambitions on renewable energy. So you see a movement towards that integration, for example, even within the ASEAN context, which we've heard a lot about. Our studies show that ASEAN can best achieve its renewable energy targets, not just of the 23% that it set itself, but exceed those and go up to 60% by 2050 through regional integration of the grids. And the same applies to the issues like energy access. Often remote populations of countries sit closer to other countries as opposed to their own capitals or where the energy is generated within their own countries. So this regional integration actually is a piece of the puzzle or part of the solution to some of those megatrends that I also referred to. And the how, of course, lies in the standardization of some of the regulations, the standardization of the agreements, whether it's on electricity trade or whether it's on transport, even on smart cities. We sit in an area of a smart city that is being cooled, probably too cold, by district cooling, right? That was driven by policy, and if that kind of policy is hardwired into all of the smart cities that are now emerging in our region, you see how regional integration can indeed push forward the frontiers.
Thank you. So, looking forward to UN's assistance for ASEAN countries to integrate, because we have been trying to integrate our gas pipeline, our electricity system for so long to not much success at the moment. So actually we are running short of time, it's already 4. But I wish to invite the floor to ask questions. Besides these questions that I got here, about 5 of them, maybe I can get the floor to ask first. Yes, please.
Thanks. A question about nuclear, specifically, while it's a fantastic baseload resource, economical over the long term, my question is looking at 2.6 billion people worldwide that don't have access to grid electricity. How do you integrate nuclear without increasing the proliferation challenge?
Okay. Thank you. I think there's nobody else to answer that except yourself.
Thank you very much for the question. I think we have already, over these decades that nuclear is operating, it's more than 60 years old, supplying electricity to the general public. We haven't seen any proliferation. There are systems in place for that. And there is many newcomer countries coming. We have 4 right now constructing nuclear, and there is some 30 more on the interest list. And we also see that the new technologies like innovation, like small modular reactors that will come online, will help remote areas. It can help also small islands, as well as it can be put next to industries and provide industry heat, directly industrial heat for the processes. And we also see that there is now the world's first floating reactor that has been fuel loaded. They are now testing it and in order to start up and supply both electricity and heat to an Arctic community, totally isolated with no grid, nothing they can rely on. So we see that these new technologies will help in small countries, in islands off the grid, and in many, many places.
Thank you. Perhaps I should extend the same question to Marianne, because France has, I think, about 58 nuclear plants. And how do you reconcile this with meeting the target of affordability, reliability, and sustainability? Yeah.
Thank you for the question. Regarding France, as you mentioned, nuclear represents 75% of the energy mix. It is a safe and affordable and competitive energy. You mentioned the German paradox. We should be aware that as Germany decided to close nuclear plants by 2033, they invest, as you said, a lot in renewables. And if we are looking at the figures, the price of electricity for consumers, for clients, residential clients, it's twice higher in Germany compared to France, and the emission of CO2 per tons is 10 times higher in Germany compared to France. And Germany is using coal and lignite, so it's not precisely CO2-free, and benefits from nuclear importation from France as well. So in France, it has been said, I mean, the grid is developed, fully developed, and 100% access to electricity, and the mix is designed. If we're talking of countries with a high level of population with no access to electricity, I mentioned some African countries. We can mention some Asian countries as well. 30% of people have access to electricity in Myanmar, for example. So solar home system solution could be an option because they are providing through a very simple device, a solar panel combined with a battery and a meter, and you can plug a TV, you can plug lights for your kids to study, you can have lights for farmers in order to work outside. These are reliable, affordable systems. We are developing them in Africa. They are testified also by our research and development center. And after three years, the clients, it owns the product. And if we compare the cost for them, it's the same cost, but with more safety, more flexibility than using petrol, kerosene, and all dangerous sources of supply. So I do very much believe in that kind of solution, and the world would be, in the future, the energy world, a combination of centralized, decarbonized solution and decentralized and more agile and flexible solutions. And big utilities like EDF are trying to be, let's say, excellent on these two pillars together.
Okay. So from your perspective, we will not be able to have 100% renewable energy without nuclear?
No. The answer is no.
Not possible.
Not now. I mean, maybe in
because somebody
long period of time. But if you are considering the economics and the supply, security supply, because we should not forget about security supply. Look at Belgium, what is happening in Belgium. We have 6 nuclear plants out of order on a total of 7. Belgium was forced to apply for, let's say, classical generation means in order to tackle the winter period. So let's not forget about security of supply when we are talking about energy.
Thank you. Okay, one more question, maybe, if you have. There's no more. It's already late in the afternoon. I'm sure you're all tired. So I think I wish to wrap up this session by going around again to have your last words on this topic of integration. Perhaps for us to take away from this session, perhaps we can go from guests.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. I think the renewable, smart city, these are trend of energy business. But in order to achieve this high standard of energy system, I need the international collaboration is quite important for this. So we want to make such kind of effort in future. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
I would say that we need to have a system that is based on diversity and also based on that we can, the total of the system delivers 24/7 is very reliable, and also that the system cost doesn't grow too much. We haven't talked about it, but when you do a lot of integration and you do a lot of connections to many countries, you need to manage it and you need to double the grid, more or less, and then the system cost picks up as well. So you have to be able to do this in optimized way, and nuclear energy can work flexibly together with renewables. If there is not too much of renewables, then it doesn't work. But at the level like in France, 75% nuclear, 25% renewables, always working fine.
Thank you. Yeah. Yes.
I guess my parting word is that when you look back at the projections of uptake of renewable energy over the past 10 years, they've always been wrong. We've always underestimated what technology can do. We've always underestimated the decline in the pricing. So we cannot base the decisions for tomorrow on today or yesterday's reality.
Okay.
And I think that we can be much more ambitious when it comes to the projections of where renewables can be, as long as we have the right policy environment.
Thank you.
Yes, I think in Japan, unfortunately, solar PV or wind power, the cost is very high. The lowest one for solar PV is 17 US cent per kilowatt hour. And nuclear, now we have 9 nuclear reactors in operation. The cost is lowest, about 6 yen or 6 cent or 7 cent. And so people tend to think renewable energy versus nuclear, but in Japan, they are complementing with each other. But the important thing is that, unfortunately, in order to reduce our emission by 80%, nuclear and renewable are not quite sufficient. And so that's why we try to develop zero carbon hydrogen. This could be the third zero carbon energy in a voluminous sense.
Yeah, hydrogen is the way forward. Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Depending on our practice in China, we believe that whether we are talking about energy transformation or the broader topic of providing, making electricity accessible to remote and less developed regions, we need a good front-end grid or network. China also has a lot of remote villages. We used to have this grid that still could not deliver electricity to everyone. Today, this grid is much more developed, so almost everyone is connected and have access to electricity. And for energy transformation, the percentage accounted by renewable energy keeps rising. Once it accounts for 25% to 1/3, then the whole performance of the grid will be different. So in China, we are studying the technology to address the performance, the grid performance issues. And I would like to remind all the friends here that when at first renewable energy only accounts for less 20%, your traditional design of the grid might be able to integrate well. As the percentage of renewable energy goes up, what we experience in China is that the performance of the grid need to be optimized and improved as well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. 20% is the limit. Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
Maybe two words. First of all, I share Professor Toyoda believes in hydrogen as a solution, but I would say green hydrogen from non-fossil fuel sources, but mostly from cracking of water molecule, and EDF recently invested in that. And secondly, we should rely also on the customer side, and a lot of innovation will be driven in the future by our customer needs.
Yeah. So I think that was very enlightening comments as a parting word. So integration is the way forward, and we need all the options in terms of technologies, in terms of systems, in terms of policies, in terms of solutions at the supply side and the demand side. All these are required for us to achieve our goal of achieving our ultimate aim of climate change solution. So thank you very much. Please join me to give a big hand to our distinguished panelists.